Campaign mode. President Donald Trump takes aim at the policies of presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden. We're at the White House. Coronavirus crisis. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin testifies before lawmakers what he says about another round of stimulus payments. A foremost right. A commission started by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo weighs in on the importance of religious freedom. And cause for hope. We hear from the organizer of an event for Catholic groups and their response to COVID-19. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, July 17th, 2020. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight, the race for the White House collides with the race to save the economy in the midst of the pandemic. Vice President Mike Pence warns of the dangers of socialism. Former Vice President Joe Biden seeks Biden climate voters. And White House counselor Kellyanne Conway weighs in on school openings and shares her own personal experience. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, Vice President Mike Pence was in Ripon, Wisconsin today, ripping into socialism and the opposing party. Vice President Mike Pence landing in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. President Donald Trump narrowly won the Badger State back in 2016.
In 110 days, the American people have a choice to make.
During his visit, the vice president warned of the dangers of socialism.
Our road leads to greater freedom and opportunity. Their road leads to socialism and decline. Joe Biden would set America on a path of socialism and decline.
Just yesterday, President Trump denounced socialism too.
Unlike the socialists, we believe in the rule of the people, not the rule of the unelected bureaucrats that don't know what they're doing.
His 2020 opponent, meanwhile, appealing to a different group of voters.
Biden climate voters will be the grassroots army and voters who care about climate change, who rally their friends, families, and neighbors around this critical issue and elect a Democrat up and down the ticket. I need you.
And back at the White House, outside the West Wing, the online or in-person school debate continues. Like so many parents, White House counselor Kellyanne Conway is in uncharted territory.
I have two kids in Maryland also in private schools, and I think we're just waiting to see what those schools say. So far, we're told we're going back.
Conway emphasizes not all school districts and virus hotspots are the same, and also believes there's no one-size-fits-all for getting kids back in the classroom. Still, she says,
what we do know about kids is that on balance, they thrive better when they're in a structured, safe environment like our schools, our school days.
We're also learning tonight that 5 million school students in Texas will likely be learning from home this fall. And back to the vice president, he says he's very proud to work with a president who believes in the sanctity of life. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Owen. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reporting for us tonight. Thanks again, Owen. The Treasury Secretary and Chief Administrator of the PPP program testified on Capitol Hill today. The hearing looked into the effectiveness of the program, which is aimed at providing economic help to small businesses during the coronavirus pandemic. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports. Eric?
Well, Tracy, the Treasury Secretary had some positive news today. He says at least 80% of small businesses are at least partially reopened right now. But he does call on Congress to pass yet another stimulus package, one that will help small businesses get them through this tough economy.
We are in a strong position to recover.
The Treasury Secretary has a request for Congress.
A next phase of relief should extend the PPP, but on a more targeted basis for smaller companies and those that are especially hard hit, such as restaurants, hotels, and other travel and hospitality business.
And Small Business Administration Administrator Jovita Carranza says the loans offered small businesses new income opportunities.
SBA loans helped a whiskey distiller in Traverse City, Michigan, transition his manufacturing operation to hand sanitizer to meet both a social need and financial gaps.
Secretary Mnuchin says another round of relief is necessary.
The administration supports using the existing money and topping it up with some additional money, and that will be discussed, and allowing for a second payment to the businesses that are especially hard hit.
With new provisions.
This time we need to have a revenue test and make sure that money is going to businesses that have significant revenue declines.
Mnuchin also wants safeguards to ensure loans go to eligible businesses. More than 30 nationwide Planned Parenthood affiliates got up to $150 million through the Paycheck Protection Program, money that is yet to be repaid, despite Administrator Carranza's request. Catherine Glenn Foster of Americans United for Life says those funds should be returned.
Planned Parenthood must return that money immediately.
And the Treasury Secretary adds that the Trump administration is into forgiving small business loans up to $150,000. So that's good news for those who already have small business loans right now. He does want a provision in there to have some sort of fraud protection. Tracy?
Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting for us tonight from Capitol Hill. Thanks again, Eric. Well, the Pentagon has banned the display of Confederate flags on military bases. The policy was laid out in a memo from Defense Secretary Mark Esper. He says the armed forces must remain focused on what unifies the country. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg says her cancer has returned, but she's not retiring. The 87-year-old says that she has received more chemotherapy for cancer related to her liver. The treatments will continue every couple of weeks. Justice Ginsburg was briefly hospitalized earlier this week for a possible infection. A commission working for the U.S. State Department says religious freedom is foremost in our unalienable rights. The group was formed last year by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
Authoritarian regimes perpetrate gross human rights violations every day, all around the world, in Nicaragua, in Venezuela, in Zimbabwe, Iran, Russia, Burma, China, North Korea. The list is very long.
Speaking in Philadelphia yesterday, Secretary Pompeo also said defending unalienable rights forms the bedrock of U.S. diplomatic policy. A convicted killer was set to be executed by lethal injection late this afternoon in Indiana. 52-year-old Dustin Honkin was sentenced to death for killing 5 people, including government informants and children. He converted to Catholicism 10 years ago. His lawyers were trying to get a last-minute reprieve. Pope Francis had said the death penalty is inadmissible because it is an attack on the dignity of the person. An update on the Russian hacking of British vaccine research that we reported yesterday. Russia is strongly denying the accusations by Western governments. A Kremlin spokesman says the allegations of Russia trying to steal vaccine details are false. Dmitry Peskov also says Russia has nothing at all to do with the hacking attacks. Yesterday, officials in Britain accused a Russian hacking group of stealing vaccine data. There is a new surge in COVID-19 cases in Israel. In response, the prime minister is reimposing sweeping restrictions, including the weekend closure of some businesses. Benjamin Netanyahu is also limiting all restaurants to takeout or delivery. He's trying to avoid another general lockdown. Israel had mostly contained the outbreak by late May, but the number of cases soared after the restrictions were lifted. In India, the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases is now more than 1 million. That is the 3rd highest in the world, just behind the U.S. and Brazil. Even though more than 25,000 people have died from the coronavirus pandemic in India, other patients are recovering quickly, and the country is also reporting a low death rate from COVID-19. In recent weeks, several people in Papua New Guinea have been physically attacked. One Catholic leader on the Pacific Ocean island blames the violence on those who practice sorcery and witchcraft. Joining us now is Hannah Brockhouse, senior Rome correspondent for Catholic News Agency, who has more on this story for us. Hannah, good to see you again.
Thank you, Tracy.
So, Hannah, tell us, what is this sorcery or witchcraft culture in Papua New Guinea, and has there always been violence there?
Well, I spoke, Tracy, to the Bishop of Mendi, who is in the southern highlands of Papua New Guinea. His name is Donald Lippert, and he told me that what he knows is that this belief in sorcery has been long-standing in the area. However, it's believed that this violence, this sorcery accused-related violence is something that is newer. It has been going on for the last handful of years, but it isn't a part of the Native culture there.
Is the Catholic Church responding, and if they are, how?
The Catholic Church is very involved in this issue. It's one of the issues the bishop told me that is on their pastoral plan. They have a group of lay people in the diocese and at various parishes who are involved in drawing awareness to this issue and to helping the victims. In that specific area, it's believed there are at least 76 victims, and the church is helping them to find both physical healing but also spiritual healing from the trauma of the violence that they have endured. As well, the bishop himself has been doing campaigns on social media to draw awareness, and they've been doing healing events such as following Mass on Pentecost. A group from a parish processed to the place where 3 women had been tortured on Easter Sunday in a violent act related to an accusation of sorcery. And so they went there peacefully, without weapons, to pray and to seek healing from this evil that is going on in the community.
I know that the Bishop of Mendi mentioned this is a clash between traditional and modern cultures. What exactly does he mean by that?
Well, what the bishop said was, as the culture modernizes, as modern culture comes in, his view is that there's sort of a chaos happening in the culture. So this violence isn't part of the natural culture. As I said earlier, it's just that this is coming in as you have the modern ways and the ways of the people there. That's kind of, he called it a bastardization of their culture. And what he said too was he sees the role of the church in combating this as integral. He encouraged spreading the gospel and bringing people to know the person of Jesus Christ. He called that the only answer to this problem. He said the Catholic Church, the Catholic faith, is the answer to this darkness. And so that's really what he and the Catholic community in the area are trying to do, is to bring Jesus Christ and his healing and share the gospel in that area.
Well, Hannah, thank you so much for coming on and shedding light on this subject for us. We really appreciate it. Hannah Brockhouse, Senior Rome Correspondent for Catholic News Agency. Thanks again, Hannah.
Thanks, Tracy.
Coming up, analysis of a recent trend of the vandalism of Catholic properties. A church in the New Haven, Connecticut parish at which the Knights of Columbus was founded has been vandalized. Words and various symbols, including a satanic one, were painted on the outside doors of the church. For the moment, St. Joseph remains closed. The incident is just the latest in a growing trend of vandalism against Catholic churches within the past week. Joining me now on Skype is Father John Paul Walker, pastor of St. Mary Parish, which includes St. Joseph Church. Father John Paul, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for coming on. First off, I want to start off by saying I am so sorry that we are speaking under these circumstances.
I am as well, but thank you very much for having me on.
Well, we're so happy that you could be on with us. I know that you're still assessing the situation, but if you don't mind, can you tell us what went through your mind when you saw this scene, this kind of attack and vandalism?
The first thing that went through my mind is, oh my, now it's come here. I've been, as all of you have, following the stories in Catholic churches all across the country that have been attacked, vandalized, desecrated, but it really hits home when it's your own church.
Absolutely, it does. I know that St. Joseph is closed right now at the moment because of this. Can you talk to us about what the church means to the parish?
The St. Joseph Church is over 100 years old, and there's many families in the parish who have been attending there for generations. It's one of the beauties of New Haven, and it's been something that's been central in the lives and the faith of Catholicism in New Haven for a long, long time.
And I know the Knights of Columbus was founded in the parish by Venerable Father Michael McGivney back in 1882, and that was during a time amid an anti-Catholic climate. Do you think that we're seeing that resurface again today?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt that we're seeing it. But I think history has shown that when Catholics or Christians are under attack, often it brings out the very best in us. And I can say that this attack against our parish, our church, just in the last 24 hours has brought out an incredible response. I mean, literally hundreds of people have been messaging, emailing, calling, sending us Facebook messages of support, prayers, of promise of prayers from literally all over the country and beyond. It's been very touching and very moving to see the solidarity of the Catholic faithful and the way that they've supported our parish in this event.
It's so wonderful to hear about the support. And you mentioned people praying for you, and you've also asked for prayers yourself. What would you like the faithful to join you in praying for? And is there anything else that folks can do to help out?
I think my first request is to pray for the person or persons who did this. Clearly, they're very troubled, whether mentally or spiritually or likely both. And we know that Christ, the divine physician, has the power to heal both body, mind, and soul. And whoever did this really needs the healing touch of Christ. And we've been praying for these people or this person, and we would ask everyone out there to do so as well. And to pray, as we've been doing for literally months on end, pray to St. Michael the Archangel for his protection over our faithful, our churches, over our Catholic Church in the United States.
Well, Father, thank you so much for coming on today and speaking with us. We really appreciate it. Father John Paul Walker, thank you again. And please know that we are praying for you here at EWTN during this difficult time.
Thank you so much.
Well, the namesake of the Knights of Columbus also is coming under criticism. Earlier this week, officials in Fulton County, Georgia, said Columbus Day is no longer a holiday. Instead, it has been replaced by Juneteenth, when American slaves in Texas learned of their freedom. And earlier this month, a statue of Christopher Columbus was removed from the California state capitol. In Baltimore and in Buffalo, statues of Columbus were vandalized or destroyed by protesters. Joining me now on Skype to talk more about this is Carol Delaney, retired professor of anthropology at Stanford University and the author of the book Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem. Carol, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about Christopher Columbus and Catholicism.
Well, as the book is titled, people don't know anything about his whole mission. I mean, he was always deeply religious, but close to the Franciscans. And wherever he went, he always stayed with the Franciscans. But his whole project was to go to meet the Grand Khan in China, as we know. But the money was to be used to finance a crusade to take Jerusalem back from the Muslims before the end of the world. And he even figured out how many years were left. And he wanted everybody to become Christian so they would be saved. It's in all his agreements with Queen Isabella. Go ahead.
No, continue, please.
It was in his agreements with Isabella, but nobody knows what the whole project was about.
I know in your book you also say he wasn't driven by greed or imperialism, but by religious passion. You touched on that. Can you talk about that maybe a little bit more?
Well, I think I did just a minute ago. He was very much religious, and after the first voyage, when he came back after the first voyage, all of the men that he'd had to leave behind were dead. And when he went back to Spain, he became a lay Franciscan monk and is said to have worn the robes for the rest of his life.
Carol, if you had the chance, I'm wondering, what would you like to say to someone who wants to remove the name of a statue of Christopher Columbus from a building or a school and remove a statue as well?
I think they know nothing about the man at all. And I have to say, I didn't know anything much except in 1492, he sailed the ocean blue. What happened was I was teaching a class called Millennial Fever in '99, and everybody was afraid of the turn of the millennium and what was going to happen, and planes would crash, etc. And I came across one little footnote to Columbus's apocalyptic millennial beliefs, and I'd never heard about them. And that was very interesting, because a lot of my work has been about religion. And so the more I found out, the more I investigated, the more I realized people know nothing about this man. And I
Carol,
wish they would
so much for
read his diary or my book.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on, and we appreciate the insights and you chatting with us a little bit more about Christopher Columbus. We appreciate it. Carol Delaney, retired professor of anthropology at Stanford University and author of the book Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Up next, two Catholic groups are set to meet tomorrow to discuss COVID-19 and religious freedom. As the country continues to grapple with the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, two Catholic healthcare groups are hosting a digital conference tomorrow to address some of those issues as well as religious freedom. Joining me now on Skype to talk more about this is Louis Brown, Executive Director of Christ Medicus Foundation, which is co-hosting tomorrow's event along with the Catholic Medical Association. Louis, welcome back. Great to see you.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Well, before we get to talking about what's happening tomorrow, I want to talk about the title of the conference. You're calling it A Cause for Hope, Catholic Healthcare and Religious Freedom in the Face of Crisis. Can you talk a little bit more about that and why you decided to make that the focus of the conference?
Right. It's important that we as Catholics look at everything with the eyes of faith. Folks are going through, myself included, a lot of suffering for a lot of different reasons. A lot of people have passed away from the coronavirus, COVID-19. Other folks are experiencing extraordinary human carnage from all of the economic loss that's occurred in our country. Even though we have experienced all of the suffering, we believe in a God, we believe in a resurrection, we have faith, we have hope. And so we look at the eyes of faith and we see the supernatural blessings that God gives us in the Mass and the sacraments, the power of the Holy Spirit. But we also see the natural blessings the Lord has given us in Catholic healthcare, which is the best healthcare in the United States, an army of physicians, doctors, nurses, epidemiologists, healthcare leaders that can provide a true voice for this public health crisis and help us in discernment with the Lord to go forward and to protect the health and safety of our families, of our selves, of our communities, and to get through this. And so we think that together is an extraordinary cause for hope.
Yeah, and healthcare is still very much center stage as we continue to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, as you mentioned. And as Catholics, there are some very important ethical issues that we grapple with, whether it's caring for the sick or the search for treatments. Can we talk about that?
Sure. I think that's a big issue. We have to recognize that much of the global health apparatus around the world has beliefs that they advance that are gravely contrary to Catholic social teaching, whether it's about beliefs about the beginning of life or the end of life, belief about familial and parental rights, belief about the truths of the human person, beliefs about what should or should not be in a vaccine. So those are all issues that we have to consider. What's going into any potential vaccine? How is it being produced? How is it being distributed? Are families having appropriate access to the loved ones who may have COVID, may be in a difficult situation? Are patients having access to the sacraments? Are people with disabilities or that are older and elderly, considered to be seniors, are they having appropriate treatment, receiving appropriate care, or are they experiencing some level of discrimination because they have a disability or because of their age? So those are all things we have to remain vigilant about, and that we have to advocate at the federal, at the state level, if in the courts, if necessary, through grassroots organizing efforts, and through just civil communication with our public health officials, with our state and local and federal leaders, to make sure that human dignity for everyone is being protected at every single level, at every step of the way. The two are not mutually exclusive.
I know that you're also going to be taking a look at religious freedom at the conference. What do you think are the important issues that need to be addressed, and how do you think we can do it?
Right. I think there's two big issues. First, you see with this very serious coronavirus, with this public health crisis, as serious it is, we see state and local officials in parts of the country using this crisis as an opportunity to illegitimately and unjustly infringe on religious freedom. We also saw in the last few weeks, so that's one issue. And so we have to make sure that that we communicate to our civil leaders that public health and religion and freedom of religion can coexist and actually mutually buttress each other so that we can flourish as a society. That's number one. Number two, within the last few weeks, we saw a series of Supreme Court decisions. One of them was really bad. That was the Bostock decision. But several of them were very good, including the Espinoza decision on Catholic schools, and particularly the Little Sisters of the Poor decision. As good as the victory of the Little Sisters of the Poor was at the Supreme Court to say that they have a right to exercise their religious freedom and conscience in their own health care plan, we have the potential of a future presidential administration, future state actions that could roll all of these gains on religious freedom back. We have to remain vigilant on religious freedom in this public health crisis, but also in protecting, defending, and advancing more than ever before as a country, religious freedom in healthcare as we go forward and understand what is the future of healthcare in the United States after this pandemic.
Well, Louis, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. Louis Braun, Executive Director of the Christ Medicus Foundation. Thanks again, Louis.
Thank you.
And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.